I'm here with Nora Masige. She's based in Sydney. She's a writer, creative, filmmaker, and we're going to touch base with her with what she's been up to, as well as some of her thoughts around some of the films that have recently been out there. So thank you so much for joining us. So first off, can I hear a little bit more about how do you navigate through your sort of creative output as well as creating works and your writing?
Yeah. Wow. That's such a loaded question. Let me think. Let me think. So I first studied TV production. So that's kind of where my love for creativity came from. And yeah, I struggled after finishing the course to get work. And the only reason I got my first job in TV was thanks to my lecturer. I didn't realize that he'd actually recommended me for a job that I'd applied for, but not knowing he recommended me for it. So then it kind of like came together and I got the job and I was like, wow. So it's thanks to him that I got my foot in the door in the television industry. And then still university connections gave me another leg up, but after that it's my career just stalled. Yeah. So lack of knowing any more people who could get me more connections, it kind of stalled. So I decided to do writing instead. So yeah, I studied writing and kind of a similar thing happened when I graduated. It was like, okay, my doesn't really fit in anywhere. I'm trying to pitch my work. It's not really getting anywhere. So yeah, but one thing my lecturer always said to me was use social media. You don't have to do it the traditional way. I would say, oh, there's no spaces for diverse people to share their voice if it doesn't, match this. He's like, social media, social media. So his voice kind of remained in the back of my head. It's like, I can still have an outlet for writing anyway. Yeah.
That's amazing. Now, for you, when you were sort of working in the film and television space, like what was some of the let's say systemic things that you felt that were potentially flawed that doesn't really allow people of color to actually really feel comfortable in their space as well as pitch truly what they would like to see?
Mm. Whoa. I guess even looking at my first job in TV, that was a struggle. So I only ended up staying there for about a year
Mm.
because I did experience racism while I was there. And even though I complained about it, I was told, we didn't see anything wrong. We worked in open plan offices where everyone could clearly see what was happening, but no one really, like some people would come to me and speak about it privately, but no one wanted to say anything kind of publicly, and say, yeah, we saw this thing happening. So I was like, well, where is the kind of like public outrage? It's like you can talk to me privately, but that doesn't really change, it doesn't change the issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that for you, like, was it sort of like, okay, well, they identify there are issues, but it's not going to be public because nobody wants to rock the boat or something, or because you're an outlier, and then the fact that you've raised these issues, it's like they're just trying to hush it. Is that how you kind of felt? And then,
Yeah. Yeah. I really questioned why we have an HR department. At the time, it's like, are you protecting me? Are you just protecting the company? You know what I mean? Because you didn't really listen to what I was saying, raising concerns about someone who had done something to me in the company. You decided to stay with their version of events. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I don't know why that happens. Yeah, I think, yeah.
now for you as a creative, like having to experience such like tension and knowing the fact that you're being done because there's a systemic thing, like how do you process it? Do you have moments where you just, oh, man, like this is so tiring, the fight, like should I just
Yeah.
just be normal? Like do I have to raise these things, or should I just do something that's easy? Like what goes into your mind?
Wow. That's a good question because it's something that I grapple with almost on a daily basis. It's like, I just want to live a normal life and not have to constantly fight for
Mm.
my career.
Yeah.
It's like, when I look at my career, I'm like, most of it's just been me fighting. And I'm like, why is this my career? Why can't I just, maybe I should leave the arts behind, go and work a normal job. And I actually did that. I tried that, and there's still racism there anyway. So I'm like, okay, let me just go back to the arts and do what I love. And I think it's because it's something that I love, I keep just doing it. I'm like, if I have to fight to be able to do what I love, then so be it. Yeah.
Now, your transition into writing. So what was that like? And what were some of the pieces that you first started out writing, and how did that build up to maybe the recent article that we've kind of seen that's pretty much kind of allowed other people to sort of say, yep, there is an issue. There's an article and that's how I feel. And it's written in a way that really represents what we're feeling. Tell us.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, well, after I studied TV and was struggling kind of in my work in that area, I decided to go on YouTube and start reviewing films on there. Yeah, so that was a great outlet and kind of ties into my lecturer telling me to use social media when I would complain. It was an amazing outlet for me to just say how I felt about certain films, what I felt was a great film and why it was exciting for me. And I actually had a lot of people from overseas who would comment and go, oh, wow, that's so cool that you reviewed that. That's, more so than here in Australia. But to me, that made me feel like, oh, okay, maybe, I can have a voice. And so I kind of continued on that reviewing film trajectory. And that's what kind of led me to kind of explain my experience using films and like intertwine film analysis with kind of a bit of journalism, I guess, in looking at my story and like the people of color trying to fight against racism and stuff like that. Yeah.
So I would say your recent big emergence, like once I saw your name pop up in the article that you wrote, was probably the biggest stir. So your article on boycotting Ralph Deher's film, but also before that you had the boycott, right? So what was that process like for you, and like for you to even boycott like publicly? Like, was there a little bit of fear, anxiety behind that? Because it's not an easy thing to do, because it's easier to turn a blind eye. What really got you to that point where you're like, I'm going to say something about this?
Yeah. Wow. I think when I saw the trailer, I couldn't get it out of my head. Like when I would sleep, that was the only imagery that was in my head, and kind of trying to grapple with why an image like this exists. And it's 2023, and I thought we had at least moved past that stage, So I fought with it for so many days and it wouldn't leave me. And I'm like, okay, let me try and do something. Maybe that'll help me feel better. So I thought, okay, well, what do I do? I have to give a shout out to my sister, because I always like talk about it with her, and she was like, what if, people have boycotted films before, why don't you try and do that? And I was like, whoa, do I want to really take a huge step like that? And I kind of went, you know what, let me actually do it. And yeah, that's when I made the decision to do the boycott, and it made me feel slightly better. And I'm like, okay, let me go in the direction that where I'm feeling like it's helping me feel better about seeing that imagery that kind of traumatized me. Yeah.
And what was the response with the boycott? Like, did you find a lot of people like come out and connect with you and feel similar things as well, or?
No, not at first. No, I think when I'm in a part of a Facebook group that is with other Black women from like the African diaspora in Australia, and they kind of understood and kind of started like signing up and going, okay, what's going on here? Yes, I'll sign your boycott. Then that kind of gave me a bit more confidence to go, okay, let me share it further. And it still didn't go as far as I thought it would, because I don't know why. And I think having that article be released about it did help as well. But then lots of people were seeing the boycott but not a lot of people were signing it. So it's like, well, what's the disconnect here?
It could be, personally, I think it could be like, because in Australia, there's not a lot of that. So there'll be people who probably would want to support it, but there is also fear of being seen and known, and then being ousted as well, because the system itself is much, much more dominant. And I feel like, because I'm in America, I feel like there's so many advocacy groups, that even groups and organizations would even stack up and back each other up to push through a cause. You know what I mean? So there's much more stronger alliances. But I do find that your article really hits people, because it's just saying, let's not ignore the subject matter. Let's not ignore this. I'm just going to put it out there. I'm just going to call it as it is. So in a way, it would have still stirred people, like people who felt that, go, yeah, that's what I believe. But people to actually do something, that's still a couple of steps before they'll be able to do something. You know what I mean? But I think all in all, for you to be able to do that, I reckon 100% people are still moved. You know, people are still moved. It's just that the momentum of all of them moving that will create the change. There's an aftermath. So we're just kind of waiting on that aftermath. But I wanted to ask you, for your perspective, I know this is a really, like, you probably got a list of things on what the issues would be, but when a non-colored person writes, directs, produces content of colored people, what are some of the really, like, imminent, like, problems that occur off the top of your head that when you can see already, even though they keep on doing it, but what is the issue?
I guess it's not understanding the nuance in that lived experience, because I'm like, in my head, I'm like, you haven't lived in the shoes of this person. How do you think that you can tell their story? Like, and then that's when we get into the areas of stereotyping certain cultures, and that's a huge problem. I thought that we had kind of, this is just me thinking we had pushed past this, but it seems that it's something that's still happening.
For me, I find it's kind of sad, because sometimes I hear the whole thing, but we're telling your stories to help your community. I hear that a lot. Or you don't know how to tell your stories, so we know how to tell your stories from an angle that our audiences will understand. And it really shits me when I hear that, like, because first off, you're robbing someone of that experience of telling that story authentically, and you're telling it in a way that you would feel good if you're watching it. So if you're not from that community, you watch, oh, look at these sad people.
Oh my God.
I feel better in my lounge room watching. You know what I mean? It's trauma porn. Push off the bat, trauma porn. Trauma porn or white savior. Or maybe a combination of both. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh, yes.
And I find that even in, like, when we're talking about different agencies that support projects and funding, they still don't understand that.
Yeah, that's a problem. That's a huge problem. I'm like, we need to have something in place where we go, okay, how are we making the decision to fund this film? Have we looked at who's in those, like, positions of writer, producer, director?
Yeah. And also, like, even like where that project comes from and why. Because if you think about it, yes, you got to get the producer, get the funding, but sometimes you think, okay, they're making that story because they want to mine this community for the story. So a certain demographic has that vulnerability story is the next thing. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's really harmful for all of us. At the same time, it's hard, because you put a story out there, sometimes the community be like, yeah, but at least our story's out there. Maybe more of our stories will create change. But at the same time, if we don't have the writers to write it, then it will always be kind of mined. Our stories will be by people who think they're experts at it to tell our story, you know, which is really, really sad. And especially for us as creatives, right? We're creatives. We're trying to fit in. We try to work our way in the system. The system will not give us a chance to write. No way. You know, they'll get us to be attached to a project. Tick that box, but they don't really give us the change. You know, and when we have a complaint, let's get let's move them along. Let's
Yes, to
take
the
them and we'll
side.
blacklist, you know?
Exactly.
And then we have to find other avenues to get our voices out there. So what I totally commend you finding this other avenue, not stopping, not just going, you know what, forget about it, I'm just going to let go, but finding another way. YouTube, online, just to get your voice out there, which is such a fantastic thing to see. So for you, now, to the outer eye, like, you know, with Ralph de here, he's like Dutch born, white filmmaker. He's managed to really get away with this for a very, very long time, this cultural appropriation. Why do you think there's not an uproar from your perspective or a backlash? Like he's been in multiple films.
I know.
An icon.
I know, it's so tricky. It's so tricky. I thought to myself, I'm like, is it because now he's been making films for years. I'm like, is it because he's this huge, well-known director? And then he's claimed that he's collaborating with the different communities, but it's like, is that why he's gotten away with it? Or like you're saying, he has attachments where he gets like different people of color to be involved in the films.
Yeah. Because it's not like he's like, okay, I'm going to direct and I'm going to have a co-director who's of that color.
Yeah.
You want to collaborate? Well, give us a chance at the table. Why is that not happening? You want to just us to be here to tell you all our stories. You can pick, choose, mold. Like that's something that I'm really like, I can kind of see, but it's hard to sort of pinpoint because there's so many different ways that they will be able to, you know, sort of answer to that. Like, oh, you know, because there's no one in the community that's as skillful or, you know, and all that, which is bollocks.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I think potentially that could be why. And maybe because, as I said, from our community, we haven't had opportunities to really be okay with speaking out. You know, think about it. We're coming from migrant backgrounds. We struggle as it is to try to find a normal job, let alone having to advocate and fight for the arts. Because for us, arts is somewhat like a luxury. You know, people sit there and they can choose things. They can see what things they can consume to create more meaning in their life. Literally having to find work and trying to survive is a big thing for us, right?
Exactly.
So many things that go on that I think that the industry doesn't quite understand, and it's up to us, you know, to really kind of like express it. Now, for you, I want you to think about what do you think some of your sort of advice do you have to, you know, other creatives in your, you know, situation, or even in that might be even in the emerging stages, or even artists who aren't aware, because I'm actually quite aware that there are certain artists of our color, of our kind, that do not see this discrepancy. And for them to sort of identify these red flags, as well as find ways to, you know, respond to that.
That's a great question. I think education, I find like I'm still someone who's learning myself, but I have to keep doing it. It takes work, because it's like I see sometimes people say, oh, I'm not racist. It's like, you can't just stop there. It's like, how are you being anti-racist? Like, what are you doing? I've been in a room where someone has said something racist to me and everybody is just silent. And you can tell they're wanting to react, but are not really saying anything. I'm like, well, how are you helping make the situation better? So I think about what ways you can help be anti-racist is where I would start looking and going, okay, so you can understand what's wrong, what's right. And so, that's where what I would advise.
Yeah. Now for you, like, would you have any films or television that you find that have really had such a very good process that really included writers of color, but in a very substantial position, and the outcome has been profound?
Yes. Actually, there's an Australian YouTube series
Mm.
called No Ordinary Love
Oh,
that I recently watched. Yeah, it's I wrote it down somewhere because I found it, and the thing is, finding content like this is a struggle because it's not mainstream. I actually have to go digging and like find it. Yeah, so No Ordinary. It's I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, it's a Korean and African um amalgamation of a rom-com, like
right.
a yeah, K-drama rom-com type
Mm.
of. Yeah, and I was like, wow, I haven't seen anything like this in the Australian context. And it had nuance. It was just, it
Mhm.
was so new that I
Yeah.
was like, I don't even know how to put it in words. I
Mm.
just think, yeah, people should go and watch it and see what it looks like when you have, people of color actually making their own stuff.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. Now, for you, future directions, like where do you hope to move into? Like, even though for us, like, it's very simple for us. Is well, not simple. It's complicated because we're always like in between lots of bitty things and
Yeah.
hoping something really drops, and then we get on to another level, and then we work it again, and then that's how
Yeah.
we kind of we don't sail through the top. White people do.
Yes.
We actually do a lot of this, right? Oh my God.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
For you, like, what would you like to move into? Would it be if you can get a chance to sort of like get into filmmaking, create some sort of film project that encapsulates some of these experiences, or would you like to write a screenplay? What's potential in the works?
Wow. Wow. Um, Like you're saying, because the journey has just kind of been like that, it's been exhausting. I feel exhausted to even think about what I want to do next.
Yeah.
But definitely, yeah, getting into screenwriting. That's kind of what I focused on actually more so, and fell into this journalistic kind of on the side to kind of fight to advocate to be able to screenwrite. So yeah, maybe be able to write something of my own one day.
But I also think you've got filmmaking, and also you've got a way of expressing things that I think audiences would love to hear. So that could be something like I feel like with you, that could be a side thing that you do to as you're going, finding your way up, because you're not only just one thing. I think, and especially now there's not a lot of people speaking out. So when it
Mm,
is, it's so refreshing to see. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So for us to have this conversation, other people will probably be watching and go, oh yeah, oh yeah, these people are bold enough to have this conversation. So
Yeah.
so yeah, and I think you'll definitely get to your screenwriting stuff as with all the other things. But I think the fact that you're advocating and you're really calling things out, that's your big, you're drawing the line. And as some people will push people away, but there'll be people who go, yep, I want to work with her. Like, who is this woman? Why is she fighting for this? What other assets that she has? What stories that she want to tell? You know what I
Mm,
mean? I think that's going to be quite exciting journey. Now, do you have any last sort of commentary about
yeah.
anything? Yeah, feel free. Mm.
Wow. First of all, I actually wanted to say thank you so much for having this conversation, because I think it's people like you who are helping bring a voice to issues in the industry, and I hope that it'll continue to bring change. I see a silver lining. I'm slowly starting to see some change in Australia, and I hope we can get to a point where we are, you know, having more conversation about race and racism, like out in the open, and working towards positive change.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in to Artful Impact, and I really do wish you all the best. But we will still keep connected because I want to give you some contacts that you can keep on working on your journey and all. So thank you so much.
Thank you.